네, 안녕하세요 여러분. 서울환경연합에서 주관하는 Save Our Bees 도시에서 보호하는에 대한 미국 저시스 소사이티 전문가분을 모시고 강연을 시작하겠습니다. 지난 겨울 꿀벌 80억 마리가 집단으로 폐사하는 사건이 벌어졌었죠. 벌은 이 식물의 수분을 돕고 있어 벌이 사라진다면 생물 다양성이 감소하고 우리는 심각한 식량 위기를 맞이할 것이라고 알고 있습니다. 우리보다 더 10년 전에 꿀벌 집단 실종이 보고되었던 미국과 유럽에서는 이 꿀벌 폐사의 원인을 기후변화, 서식지 파괴와 더불어 살충제 남용으로 지목하고 벌을 보호하는 시민운동을 해왔습니다. 양봉업의 대상인 꿀벌만이 아니고 다양한 야생벌을 주목하고 있습니다. 오늘 우리는 도시에서 벌을 어떻게 보호할 것인가에 대한 미국의 경험을 배우고자 합니다. 우리는 환경운동연합의 자매 조직인 국제 NGO 지구의 벗에 요청하여 뛰어난 발제자를 소개받았습니다. 미국에서 활동하는 국제 NGO 단체 저시스 소사이어티의 농약 프로그램 전문가인 샤론 셀비지오를 온라인으로 초청했습니다. 안녕하세요, 샤론. 함께해서 너무 반갑습니다.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today.
네, 오늘 우리가 샤론에게 요청을 하고 듣고 싶었던 내용은 도시에서 벌을 어떻게 보호할 것인가, 또 살충제 사용을 줄이기 위한 노력, 과연 어떻게 가능한가, 대안은 무엇인가, 그리고 한국에서 우리는 무엇을 어떻게 해야 하는가에 대한 좀 궁금증을 찾고자 합니다. 강연을 들으면서 질문이나 의견이 있으신 분들은 유튜브 댓글에 달아주시면 저희가 질문하고 활발하게 토의를 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 그럼 샤론 셀바지오를 모시고 약 40분가량의 강연을 듣도록 하겠습니다. 샤론 부탁합니다.
Okay, shall I share my screen?
네.
Does it show up well there? Is the screen showing well? Good. Well, thank you so much. I am so honored to be here speaking to KFEM Seoul. I'm joining you from Portland, Oregon in the United States. And I hope everyone can hear me. And I think you're doing great work there in Korea. I'm excited to hear about your work. I learned a little bit about your Korean conservation efforts earlier this week when I presented at the 12th World Human Rights Cities Forum in Gwangju. And so I'm excited to learn more and to share between our countries what we can do. So I'm speaking in English. Thank you to the interpreter. So I'll try to speak slowly as I go along. And I've been asked to share a few case studies from the US on how to restore nature in cities. So nature in cities, what some of us here call rewilding, is an essential step to help conserve pollinators. The photo that you see here is from the city of Chicago, Illinois. And this city has done an outstanding job converting its premier spaces along the lakefront of Chicago to native prairie habitat. This is an outstanding example of what can be done to restore habitat in large cities and to build public awareness of the importance of pollinator conservation. To the interpreter, I didn't put this in my notes, but maybe you can tell people, many people walk this area and see this pollinator habitat and learn about pollinators from going to this area because it is so close to downtown. So let me tell you a little bit about the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. I work for the Xerces Society. We were founded in 1971 by Robert Michael Pyle, and we originally focused on butterflies, but eventually we broadened our scope to protecting all native invertebrates, and our motto is protecting the life that sustains us. Sometimes we remind people that this means protecting the little things that matter. And we were named after the Xerces blue butterfly, which is shown here on the left. This used to be a butterfly that used to live near San Francisco in coastal sand dunes, but it was the first American butterfly to go extinct because of development. So our main programs include pollinator conservation, endangered species conservation, and reducing pesticide use and impacts. So let's talk first about why biodiversity matters for people. I'm sorry, somebody just rang my doorbell, but I'm going to leave it. For example, Xerces is part of the larger Save the Bees movement, but our focus is on the conservation of native bees and other insects. It is not going to help people to focus only on saving honeybees. There are 20,000 native bees around the world, and they do a lot for us, and other native insects do as well. This slide shows a wide variety of plant seeds, most of which would not be produced without the action of native bees. So for biodiversity, there's no group of animals that beats insects. 80% of the known species on planet Earth are insects. We know that for a long time, at least in Western societies, insects have been ignored and even reviled. But it is finally becoming apparent that the ecological services that insects and other invertebrates provide, such as nutrient cycling, pest control, pollination, and food for other animals, are essential to our well-being. And these four functions, which is not even everything that insects do, they translate into $70 billion annually in value just in the United States. These are free ecosystem services. So for example, pollinators help provide our food. About 35% of crop production worldwide depends upon or benefits from pollination by insects. And the food that is produced is the most nutritious part of our diet, fruits and vegetables that are most dependent on insect pollination. The value of these crops is between $18 to $27 billion in the US and up to $217 billion worldwide. Also, many people, especially people who live in cities, are experiencing a loss of connection with nature that is unprecedented in our human evolution. This phenomenon is called the extinction of experience by Robert Michael Pyle. the Xerces founder. And the loss of interaction with nature leads to deteriorating public health and a reduced affinity for nature. But connection with nature supports the development of curiosity, experiential learning, and even spiritual well-being. So the more urban green space that people have available, the more they engage in outdoor activities. So it's very important to have this green space in cities. And that's not all. We also have the service of clean water provided by freshwater mussel invertebrates that live in our streams and rivers. They filter the water that we drink, cleaner drinking water. You can see them here living in the rocks in the bottom of the river. And in July 2022, the United Nations General Assembly recognized a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right. And this resolution implicitly acknowledges that our human well-being depends upon a healthy environment and the ecosystem services that nature provides. So, are insects declining, and why? Many studies have documented insect declines around the world. Let's take a look at just a few of those and the reasons why insects and other invertebrates are under threat. By the way, this photo is monarch butterfly. They roost in these large congregations on trees during the winter time in Mexico and on the coast of California. So there has been a large-scale loss of pollinator diversity. Pollinators are showing signs of stress and decline. We're seeing range contractions and declines in abundance of many native pollinators. And habitat loss, according to studies, habitat loss is a major factor. Pesticides, we use 1 billion pounds of those just in the United States. They are also a major cause. Bee kills from pesticides have been widely reported, but even when they don't kill, most pesticides could cause subtle adverse effects that can slowly result in population decline. And then diseases and invasive species, as well as climate change, are also impacting pollinators. So the widespread contamination of the environment is a severe threat. We see pesticides nearly everywhere that we look, in pollinator plants like milkweeds, in honeybee hives, in rivers and streams, and even in wildlife refuge lands and high mountain lakes, and even in the Arctic, Alaska, Canada, places where people barely live. So this widespread contamination is an indication that it isn't about just a few bad actors, such as people not following pesticide laws. It's rather the common legal uses that are leading to toxic loads across many landscapes, practically all landscapes. And we also see evidence that climate change is threatening invertebrates. There's research from around the world that suggests that up to 25% of bumblebee species are at risk of extinction. Within the United States, a study found that bumblebee declines are associated with areas where current temperatures are hotter than historic temperatures, as you can see in these red zones. Butterfly declines have also been linked to temperature increases. A study looking at Western butterflies found that butterflies have declined by 1.6% per year over the last 40 years, and that the declines are linked most strongly to fall warming. Pesticides also contribute to climate change because of the manufacturing, which is done with fossil fuels, transport, and the use of pesticides all results in greenhouse gas emissions. On the flip side, climate change is often projected to result in increased pesticide use due to the longer warm season in many areas and risk of flooding. For example, this photo shows residential flooding during the recent hurricane to hit Florida, Hurricane Ian. And areas subject to flooding experience more mosquito breeding, mold and mildew, all of which can increase pesticide use. So I'd like to cover a few case studies from the US. These have been selected to showcase how people in towns and cities are rallying around pollinator conservation. And this photo here shows some people from the city of Eugene, Oregon on the West Coast, out surveying for bees and butterflies. And they are happy, they are smiling because this is contributing to their well-being. Before I go into case studies, first, the examples that I'm going to cover come from the work of the Xerces Society. And I've chosen to focus on examples that are transferable to other places, to Korea and other countries. And before I talk about those, I want to say a few words about our approach. We focus on providing science-based information so that the information that we provide is believable, credible. We also promote and assist with habitat restoration and pesticide reduction efforts on the ground. And this includes a wide range of things, but we're promoting and assisting with those efforts on the ground. We also contribute to scientific research through working with scientists, community science, and so on. So often the information that we provide to people, especially people who are new to learning about pollinators and insects, the information is very simple. For example, a basic piece of information that we always share is what native pollinators need, as shown on this slide. Food, especially native plants. Bees need nectar and pollen. Caterpillars, butterflies need leaves to eat. And shelter, which is necessary for nesting and overwintering. Many bees nest in the ground. In fact, in the United States, 80% of our bees nest in the ground. So they need some bare soil for that. And some nest in hollow stems. So it's important to have some hollow stems available in the landscape. Many butterflies need fallen leaves to spend the winter in. And finally, safety from pesticides and contaminants in the environment. Another simple thing that we talk about is the association between native plants and biodiversity. For example, as we rally people to plant trees in cities to sequester carbon and to combat the urban heat island effect, it's important to select the species that people plant carefully. Planting native trees will mean that native insects are better supported. In the United States, willows, oaks, and maples are some of the most valuable kinds of trees for supporting butterflies and moth diversity. So we see that natives do carbon sequestration, urban heat island, but also supports biodiversity. You can see here, again, I'm adding to the interpreter. This is a swallowtail butterfly on an oak tree, and this is a native bee on a maple that is in here in Oregon. So let's look at this question of urban landscapes. Can towns and cities really play a role in pollinator conservation, stemming the trend toward extinction? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? So, and I apologize for those of you who've heard a lot of this talk already. Some of you heard this talk the other day, but I added some things. So I'm going to talk about 5 case studies. The first case study being the Bee City USA, Bee Campus USA program. This is an initiative that began 10 years ago in Asheville, North Carolina, here. And it has since grown to 305 cities and campuses across the United States. We might even have a campus in Canada, a couple of cities in Canada. And to join, cities and campuses pass a resolution that includes committing to conserving and enhancing pollinator habitat, reducing pesticide impact, and holding educational events. And Xerces Society supports these cities and campuses by providing education, technical resources, and by highlighting the work of the cities and campuses through our newsletters and social media so that everybody can learn from what other people are doing. So cities and campuses first establish habitat. They also protect the existing habitat that they already have. This slide shows an example from the town of Barrington Hills, Illinois, and the University of Vermont. This is created habitat, new habitat. And I think you'll agree that it's very beautiful. And another requirement of the Bee City and Campus USA program is to reduce pesticides. So since the program started, more than half of the affiliates have reduced the risk of pesticides. 8 have stopped using pesticides altogether. 48 have eliminated neonicotinoid insecticides, or they've shifted just to organic products. 50 have implemented non-chemical pest prevention, and 29 have stopped cosmetic use or the use of pesticides primarily to maintain aesthetics. So we still have a long way to go, but one thing that we include in the Bee City and Bee Campus program is a requirement that they formalize their pest management through a written plan. And we encourage these cities to also distribute information to homes to change home pesticide use habits. So this chart from the city of San Francisco shows what can be accomplished over time. San Francisco, which is in California, eliminated 97% of their most dangerous pesticides in 10 years. And this shows what is possible. Another big benefit of the Bee City campus requirement is community participation. So community building is a positive outcome of the Bee City, Bee Campus USA program. And I think we all need this, especially in cities. So when we think about conservation in urban space, let's keep in mind that a striking 60% of the additional land projected to become urban by 2030 is not even built yet. It is still yet to be built. And while this may seem like cause for despair, it also means that as conservationists, we not only have a unique opportunity to help design spaces that will make a difference for generations, but we also have an opportunity within these urban spaces to inspire and connect and educate people, enhancing their appreciation and understanding of nature, and especially the little things that can be found all around us. Luckily, inspiring and educating and connecting people is something that the Bee City USA program does very, very well. Another requirement to hold events and to educate the community about pollinators spurs a wide range of creative efforts. So we have here a Pollinator Safari, up on the upper left at Tufts University, where students are learning about pollinators, a pollinator parade, a fun event in Beaumont, Texas, community signs in Decatur, Georgia, to help people understand that if they spray for mosquitoes in their backyards, they might be killing the bees as well. And then art, like this beautiful art that was done by a student that shows how they're understanding the connection between nature, bees, and our actions. Okay, I'm going to go to a second case study, Xerces Society's Habitat Kit and Pollinator Trail program. So you can see this before and after photo here. The Habitat Kit program was started in 2019. It offers carefully selected, sustainably grown, regionally appropriate native plants to community partners for shovel-ready projects. The program started in California. We created climate-smart habitat kits designed to help both monarch butterflies and other pollinators. And the success and popularity of the program was so high that we expanded it to the northeastern United States and to Santa Fe, New Mexico. In Santa Fe, the plants are provided mainly for residential properties, people's homes, and this has created a Pollinator Trail program, which you can see here on this map, throughout the city. And so many people are already engaged. And the plants obviously are beneficial for pollinators and their habitat, but they also help reflect heat, which is important because this is a hot place. And they're selected for low water consumption, which is really also important. This is desert habitat or close to desert habitat. Outside of Santa Fe, the habitat kits are planted in a wide range of places, including farms and ranches, natural areas, parks, preserves, schools, and community spaces. So you can see people receiving the plants here and planting the plants here. The applicants for these kits must complete an application that explains, among other items, how they will protect the plants from pesticide applications. And each participant also receives planting guidance and chemical-free pest control tips. And the planting sites are used for education and outreach events, outdoor classrooms, learning labs, urban farms and gardens, youth programs, community science, and more. So there is social, educational, and community building benefits in addition to the ecological values provided by the kits. Since 2019, hundreds of thousands of pollinator plants have been planted by community partners through the Xerces Habitat Kit program in 11 states. So we'll talk about a third case study now. I've talked about the importance of protecting pollinators through providing habitat, but pollinators, of course, also need protection from pesticides. And so we've been working to expand the supply of bee-safe plants from nurseries. And many gardeners and environmental groups got involved early on this issue. Xerces issued this report in 2012, Are Neonicotinoids Killing Bees? This brought attention to neonicotinoids. And then in 2013, there was a huge kill of native bumblebees in Wilsonville, Oregon, just 10 miles away from the Xerces office. Xerces staff, Rich Hatfield, responded to calls and documented the death of an estimated 50,000 bumblebees as a result of neonicotinoids that were applied to trees in a shopping center parking lot, which was a very mundane location for a very historic event. This event spurred a nationwide awareness of the danger of neonicotinoid insecticides to bees. And then closely on the heels of this event, we saw the publication of this report by Friends of the Earth and the Pesticide Research Institute called Gardeners Beware. It was documented the very high concentrations of neonicotinoids and other insecticides, other pesticides in nursery plants across the country. So we had a movement begin of gardeners and activists that sort of erupted actually across the country with a nationwide call to nurseries to stop using neonicotinoids in plants that people would plant in their gardens and parks. And we know that nursery use of pesticides can be risky for pollinators. A wide range of pesticides are registered for nurseries and greenhouse use in the United States. It's not uncommon to see high rates of application allowed for nursery and greenhouse sites. So this means that the number of pounds that can be applied per acre is higher than what is allowed for crops in the US. And sometimes studies of the effects of these high rates are not required for pollinators. So the available studies, mostly from ornamental nurseries, document high levels of contamination, typically multiple pesticides found in a single sample. And sometimes these residue loads are high enough to kill bees or monarchs, either from a single chemical or the combined effect of the multiple pesticides present in pollen, nectar, or leaf tissue. And in woody plants, this is extra for the interpreter, woody plants can express these systemic pesticides for months to years after an application. So in the United States, the environmental groups, we had a successful campaign really led by Friends of the Earth, asking for neonic-free plants, and the market responded. But we learned that pesticide contamination from nursery plants goes beyond neonics. So we've deepened our guidance, and we recommend that when people buy plants, first, they seek out organic plants, organic pollinator plants. Second, if the nursery cannot offer you organic plants, and these are hard to find in the US, ask them if they have plants that have been grown without neonicotinoids and other similar systemic insecticides. And third, in addition, and especially if they don't have neonic-free plants, or if they don't know, ask them about the steps their nurseries and suppliers take to offer plants grown with pollinator-friendly pest management. And so although we use the phrase be safe here, buying bee safe plants, this guidance can also help people find plants safe for butterflies too. So our fourth case study, we provide assistance and advocate for policy solutions at the governmental level. So I'm going to go over some of these for safe urban habitats. So as one example, we encourage local groups to work with their state and local governments to pass laws or policies to slow down and curtail pesticide use on public properties such as parks or natural areas. So some examples, the state of Connecticut passed a law to stop pesticide use on lawns in public parks. We know that many firefly larvae and even some butterflies lay eggs on grasses and broadleaf plants in lawns, and lawn chemicals can also run off into storm drains and move directly into waterways. Mosquito management is another focus of some of our work. When not done thoughtfully, mosquito management can be very detrimental to pollinators. There is fear of mosquito-borne disease that is rising. We're also seeing new diseases move into the United States like Zika. So careful planning can avoid harmful large-scale pesticide use. So this year, the state of Massachusetts proposed legislation to make mosquito management both effective and ecologically friendly. The proposal included more monitoring for mosquito populations and disease, only considering adulticide sprays when disease thresholds are crossed, and prohibiting aerial spraying. Unfortunately, the bill failed, but several of the strategies in the bill have been incorporated into the recommendation of a state task force examining mosquito management. So given the worldwide insect declines, states can strengthen the wildlife value of their lands also by prohibiting pesticide uses in natural areas, such as wildlife refuges, forest habitats. For example, California is in the process of codifying this, even though they are not currently using insecticides on refuge lands. Minnesota is also working to expand the list of prohibited pesticides on refuge lands. We also support policies that curtail use on private property, especially in residential areas, since often pesticide use is for cosmetic or nuisance pests, not pests that will really hurt people's economic situation. So for example, the state of Maryland passed a bill that made outdoor neonicotinoid products restricted use, which in the United States means that people who are not registered and trained pesticide applicators cannot use them. That removes these products from the hands of most people who would use them in home gardens. Indoor and veterinary products were not affected by the law. In the state of New Jersey, a bill halted outdoor non-agricultural uses of neonics. The bill contained an exception for certified applicators for combating invasive species and for building perimeter treatments, which people often use here for things like ants, termites. The state of Connecticut passed a law in 2018 to ban use of pesticide misters in residential settings. These are used by people to combat mosquitoes at home. And misters in the United States are not considered pesticide devices, so they're not regulated in the United States. In the United States, only one state, California, requires that pesticide applicators report their use to the state. Tracking pesticide use provides valuable data to assess risk and respond appropriately. We encourage states to pass laws to require pesticide applicators to report their use. So our last case study focuses on the community science programs that have sprung up to engage community members in the excitement of learning about and documenting bumblebees in their communities. Xerces Society runs two of these programs, the Bumblebee Atlas project and Bumblebee Watch with partners. As I mentioned, research from around the world suggests that up to 25% of bumblebee species are at risk of extinction, but until recently, we did not have comprehensive population estimates. So these programs seek to collect better data on the populations and also expand awareness of these vital pollinators. Community science means that anyone is welcome to participate and help contribute to a better understanding of bumblebee needs. So we have thousands of volunteer community scientists now active in these efforts. The way it works is this: for Bumblebee Watch, people simply snap a photo of a bumblebee and they submit it at the Bumblebee Watch website. Then scientists at Xerces review the photo and assign an identification. For Bumblebee Atlas, people sign up to survey a larger area, and they may go for multiple visits over the season. They take more detailed data, as shown here, and they submit it to Xerces at the Bumblebee Atlas site. So in this way, we steadily build a database of observations and habitat associations, while at the same time developing observation skills and excitement in the public. We have many, many resources at our website to help. Here are a few that might be relevant to this conversation. We have this pollinator protection for cities and campuses fact sheet, which talks about what cities and campuses can do. Organic site preparation for wildflower establishment. Pollinator-friendly parks, a wonderful document about how to enhance parks. I'm adding things to the interpreter, I'm sorry. These others, buying Be Safe plants, help your community create an effective mosquito management plan, and also guidance to protect habitat from pesticide contamination. These are just a few. We have probably thousands of resources at our website. So please feel free to go visit and use these. They're in English, I know. Hopefully they can be helpful. So I want to say thank you for inviting the Xerces Society to be part of this event. And we could not do our work without all of our supporters listed here. And we're so thankful that you are spreading the word. We are a donor-supported nonprofit, so in addition to foundations and larger organizations, we have many, many individual members who help support us. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Actually, we have a little technical issue now. So yeah, could you please uncheck the English in translating option? Might be needed to check original audio, I think. It is
original
sure
audio.
also, but yeah.
Okay.
Now in YouTube, it's just going through English directly. So yeah. Yeah, we should use interpretation option. Is it fine now?
I see interpretation. Did that not work? The interpreter could not.
네, 그 유튜브 진행 과정에서는 지금 샤론의 잉글리시가 그대로 전달이 되었고요. 통역이 들려지지 않았었는데 지금 기술적인 상황을 확인하고 있고, 혹시 이게 이번에 해결되지 않으면 제가 차후에 이제 자막이나 다시 번역 영상을 올려서 공유하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 샤론 셀바지오님께서 5가지를 이렇게 경험에 대한 사항을 제안해 주셨습니다. 미국에서 BCT, 비캠퍼스 이니셔티브의 경험, 그리고 이 벌과 나비를 보호하고 서식지를 제공하기 위한 서식지 키트를 보급하고 활동하는 캠페인도 있었고요. 사실 이제 살충제 피해를 줄이는 것과 더불어서 이 벌과 나비한테 안전한 그 식물을 공급하기 위한 그런 캠페인도 있었고요. 그다음에 실제 도시에서 이 꽃가루 매개자들의 안전한 서식처를 확보하기 위한 정책적인 솔루션도 진행되고 있음을 알려주시고, 이런 벌과 나비 꽃가루 매개자를 보호하기 위한 시민과 커뮤니티 사이언스에 대한 중요한 부분도 알려주셨습니다. 네, 감사합니다. 네, 저희가 그 샤론 셀바지오님을 모시고 지난 4월 달부터 국내에서는 이제 특히 야생벌 보호 운동을 한번 시작해보자라는 그런 마음으로 여러 가지 활동을 하고 있었고, 사실 이제 저시스 소사이어티는 지난 50년간 이 무척추 동물을 보호해왔던 비영리 단체이고, 아마 지난 10년 동안은 특히 이제 벌 폐사 사건을 직면하고 활발하게 살충제 사용 중단 또는 이제 벌 서식처를 보호하기 위한 여러 활동을 해온 걸로 알고 있습니다. 그래서 저희가 몇 가지 여러 질문을 좀 준비를 했는데요. 첫 번째는 최근에 한국에서는 이제 벌이 80억 마리, 꿀벌이 80억 마리가 죽은 사건을 통해서 벌이 실종된다고 하는 것은 식량 위기를 야기할 수 있다고 하는 그런 여러 언론 보도를 통해서 이 꿀벌을 걱정하는 여론이 커져갔습니다. 근데 정부와 언론의 관심은 아직은 허니비, 꿀벌에만 관심이 있는 거거든요. 샤론이 발표해 준 거에 대한 주안점도 네이티브 다양한 토착종 야생벌이잖아요. 그래서 이 꿀벌에 대한 관심이 어떻게 하면 야생벌 보호로 이어질 수 있는지에 대해서 미국은 어떠했는지 그게 궁금했습니다.
Sharon, can you hear the interpreter's voice?
I
No.
can now. Yes.
You can hear my voice now, right?
I can hear your voice. Yes.
How about Jinha's voice? No?
Don't think so. No.
Then you maybe better just check to English option in translating. Yeah, I think there's just a technical problem between Zoom and YouTube. So yeah, it doesn't matter, I think.
Okay. So I will check English.
Yeah, please.
Okay. I'm sorry I did not realize that you couldn't hear my.
Yeah, it was totally in Korean, right? So we need to translate again. And 선생님 혹시 한 번 더 통역을 한번 해주실 수 있을까요?
네, 알겠습니다. 네.
Yeah, we're gonna translate again
네.
for a while.
최근 한국에서 꿀벌이 많이 죽었습니다. 그래서 꿀벌의 실종을 통해서 식량 위기를 걱정하고 많은 관심을 가지게 되었는데요. 여전히 허니비, 꿀벌과 양봉업에 대한 관심이지 토착종 야생벌에 대한 인식은 아직 미약합니다. 꿀벌에 대한 관심이 어떻게 하면 다양한 야생벌 보호로 이어질 수 있는지, 미국은 어떠했는지 궁금합니다.
So the question is, how do you get people who are concerned primarily about honeybees to recognize the broader suite of bees?
예, 꿀벌에 대한 관심이 야생벌까지 어떻게 확대해 나갈 수 있었는지에 대한 질문입니다.
Okay. How to do it? Yes, I think helping people, of course, to understand that it's not just honeybees that help produce the food. We help people understand that fruit like cherries, blueberries, squash, these are all primarily pollinated by native bees. So we first help people understand that they need native bees that way. That's one. Second, build appreciation for them through helping people to see them and understand that there is a diversity, and just to appreciate that diversity for the fact that it exists is another way, I think. I think people begin to enjoy this process of creating diverse habitats and seeing what shows up.
네, 감사합니다. 샤론께서 아까 프레젠테이션 했을 때 범블비, 호박벌에 대한 사례가 여러 슬라이드가 있었는데요. 미국이나 유럽, 서양에서 이렇게 범블비를 중요하게 여기는 이유가 있는지, 이게 너무 기후변화에 취약한 건지, 왜 이렇게 시민과학 프로젝트에 범블비를 주로 잘 목표를 다루는지 그게 궁금했습니다.
I think that in our work at the Xerces Society, we recognize the need to create a connection between people and certain species. And so it's what we call iconic species, like the monarch butterfly. I don't know, do you have bumblebees in Korea? Yes? Okay. We know that most people here in the United States know what a bumblebee is and have seen bumblebees. So people already know that this is a different kind of bee, a native bee. And a lot of people like bumblebees because they're fuzzy, they're large, they are familiar. And so for these reasons, we do our work not because they're more important than other bees. There are many important bees, but I think we do some of this focus because it's easier to pull people in because they already can connect with the bumblebee.
네, 잘 들었습니다. 네. 또 제가 궁금했던 거는요, 한국에서는 지난 겨울에 꿀벌이 집단 폐사하고 이 정부와 연구기관에서 그 원인에 대해서 진단하고 대처 방안을 고민하고 있는 중인데요. 여러 가지 복합적인 요인이 있다고 하면서도 네오니코티노이드계 살충제 남용에 의한 원인은 아니다라고 말하고 있습니다. 미국과 유럽은 그럴지 몰라도 한국은 아니다라고 얘기하고, 그런 역학조사를 자세히 했는지는 밝히지 않지만 직접적인 상관관계를 확인하지 못했다. 그리고 유럽에는 그 식물 종자에 농약이 코팅된 것을 파종한 거기 때문에 발생한 건데, 한국에서는 물에 희석하여 살포함으로 위험성이 낮다라고 주장합니다. 그래서 저희는 네오니코티노이드계 살충제 남용에 의한 영향이라고 보고 있는데 한국 정부는 공식적으로 인정하고 있지 않습니다. 어떻게 생각해야 될 것인지, 아니면 우리가 이 과학적인 입증을 미국과 유럽처럼 다시 해야 되는 상황일까요?
Well, neonics are not the only insecticides that can kill bees. So one reason that they have been the focus of a lot of the work is that they're more toxic than some of the other pesticides. Very, very low concentrations can kill bees. And they get inside plant tissue and can last for a long time. They can be persistent in the environment. They also get into water. Finally, they're toxic to not only bees, but many different kinds of insects. So there's a focus on neonics for these reasons, but if the government is saying it's not neonics, it could be some other pesticide. It could be another reason, you know, like lack of forage, that there's sometimes this interaction between certain kinds of chemicals in trees and honeybees. Some trees produce toxic compounds. So I don't know in this particular instance exactly what happened, but I think it's always important for citizens to get engaged and look at what data and evidence there is and make sure that whatever the reason is, that the data and the evidence supports that. And if people just don't know, they don't know, but it is concerning. I don't know how large this bee kill was, but it does sound concerning.
네, 시민들이 데이터에 기반한 증거를 만들어야겠군요. 네, 또 연관시켜서 질문을 드리자면, 그러면서도 한국 정부는 규정상 네오니코티노이드계 살충제 4종류에 대해서 조건부로 금지는 하고 있습니다. 그 조건부는 해당 식물의 꽃이 질 때까지는 살포해서는 안 된다고 규정은 되어 있지만, 사실 현장에서는 그 규정에 맞게끔 이루어지는 경우는 거의 없고, 농약 살포 현장에서 이를 감독하거나 통제하는 장치도 없습니다. 아마 미국과 유럽에서 이 농약, 네오닉스 농약에 대한 위험성이 계속 보고되고 있으니까 한국 정부에서도 그런 규정은 있지만 실제 현장에서는 그거를 규제하고 하는 장치는 없습니다. 이런 규정을 어떻게 바꾸는 게 좋을까요?
Well, it is good that they can't be sprayed on blooming plants. When neonics are sprayed on blooming plants, when the flowers are in bloom, you can have very, very, very high toxic loads on the pollen and in the nectar. So that is a good thing. Still, the applications to the soil will be taken up by plants and can be then expressed in the pollen or the nectar or the leaves later, and be at doses that, depending upon the concentration that's applied, can potentially reach lethal levels, more likely sublethal, where it doesn't kill the organism, but they may have other effects, detrimental effects. How to deal with this in policy? I presented some examples in cities where it would be prohibited to use those kinds of pesticides in home residential landscapes. So on farms, where people, you just can say, okay, they can do that on the farms, but not in the cities. Or in parks. That is one way maybe to kind of chip away at the outside of the problem, but to start small and get some possible victories. Some countries have banned neonics completely on crops. Europe, Canada, I don't remember exactly the details of that, but I believe that neonics are banned in those countries. So if you're concerned, you could try to get a law passed that would completely eliminate the use of neonics in Korea. And it wouldn't be the first country to have done so, because you could look at Europe, you could look at Ontario, I think it's Ontario in Canada, that has passed similar legislation. In Europe, I think that they did it for at first just 3 years, and then they extended it. So if people are worried that it ties the hands of the farmers, you could propose something that would be temporary and then reviewable in 3 years. These are, sometimes ways to make these kinds of policies more acceptable to people.
네, 그 법적인 제도 개선을 해야 된다고 하는 말씀에 잘 명심을 해야 될 것 같고요. 그다음에 또 그 비농업 지역, 그러니까 우리가 생활권 도시 지역부터 네오닉스나 독성 강한 농약을 규제하는 것이 좀 더 좀 올바른 지름길이라는 말씀도 잘 담아 듣도록 하겠습니다. 혹시 저희가 이제 회의 토픽을 듣거나 또는 앞서 프레젠테이션을 들었을 때도 미국의 캘리포니아 주가 특별히 이 살충제에 대한 규제가 강한 거로 좀 이렇게 뉴스를 봤던 경험이 있고요. 그래서 미국에서는 이 네오닉스 성분 살충제 또는 벌의 독성이 강한 농약 사용이 주마다 다른 것 같은데 어느 수준까지 현재 규제가 되는지 또는 주마다 다른 이유는 또 무엇일까요?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have we have several federal laws that apply nationwide for regulation of pesticides that is sort of what we call a floor. And states can enact more restrictive laws. And so some states have chosen to do that. In some cases, it's not a restriction. It's just simply like in California, the pesticide use reporting system, they're the only state that has that. And it doesn't restrict pesticide use, but it does allow us to have a much better understanding of how much pesticide is being applied, which pesticides, and where in the landscape. And so that's a valuable law that doesn't take away from people. But other states have passed more restrictive pesticide, legislation saying we won't allow any neonics in cities, or we won't allow neonics in certain cities, even on homes. So this is the American system that we have: federal government, state government, local government, and there is some freedom to enact more strict laws at the state level, in particular in the US.
네, 감사합니다. 저희가 지난 6월달, 7월달에요. 지난 여름에 서울환경연합은 서울시를 대상으로 도시공원, 가로수 등과 같은 공공녹지에 살포되는 농약 사용에 대한 정보 공개를 청구를 했습니다. 그래서 알게 된 결과 이 네오니코티노이드계 농약이 이 도시 공공녹지에서도 대량 사용되고 있는 것을 확인했었고, 그 다음에 그 사람한테도 위험할 수 있는 그 농약 물질 중인 메탐소디움, 아바메틴 또는 티오파네이트 메틸 농약 사용도 확인이 되었습니다. 그런데 그 이후 서울시는 이들 농약이 정부 기관이죠. 농진청, 산림청에서 지정한 고독성 농약이 아니고 보통 독성, 저독성이기에 인체에는 위험한 사항이 없다라고 이렇게 또 방어를 했었습니다. 그래서 사실 이게 WHO나 국제적인 기준에서는 되게 위험한 물질인데 한국에서는 이런 독성 물질 분류 차원에서 보통 독성으로 또 분리된 부분도 있거든요. 이런 경우에는 제가 어떻게 대응을 하면 좋겠습니까?
Well, I think it's very important to think about human health. That is important. But part of what we are doing is recognizing and trying to help people understand that we need to think more broadly about our dependence on the environment. So if we stop thinking about the risks, if we just say, oh, it doesn't hurt the human body, but if we're killing off pollinators that we need for our food, killing off other insects that are needed to help natural pest control, we can suffer in the long run. One thing that we see about neonics is that they end up in the water at high concentrations. We see neonics all over in the United States. And sometimes these concentrations are high enough to kill off aquatic insects that fish eat. So we need fish. I think you eat a lot of fish in Korea, I believe. So we need to have an ecosystem that supports fish. And so I think in responding to the city, help them understand the ecosystem, the ecological ramifications of such use. It's not just that, the person applying the chemical is not going to be harmed. What's going to happen to the fish that person wants to eat if the habitat and the food that the fish eat is no longer there? So I think you can pull in these other arguments.
네, 생태계 먹이 사슬과 여러 가지 환경 오염 농축에 대해서 더 캠페인과 또는 서울시를 더 설득해 보도록 하겠습니다. 아까 샤론께서 발표했던 슬라이드에도 그런 그림이 있었는데요. 실제 시민들이 눈으로 보는 목격하게 되는 이런 생활권에서 농약을 살포하는 게 모기를 잡기 위해서 또는 감염병을 막기 위해서 그 생활 공간에서 연막 소독을 많이 하지 않습니까? 그래서 연막 소독은 독성이 높지 않을 거라는 그런 주장도 있고 그렇게 받아들여지는 부분이 있는데, 이 모기를 잡기 위한 연막 소독은 이 수분 매개자 곤충과 또는 사람에게 어떤 피해를 끼치고 있다고 혹시 확인을 하셨나요?
Yes. This is a complex issue, mosquito management, but many mosquitoes do not carry disease for people. Yes, they could be annoying. Nobody likes to be bitten by a mosquito, but it's important that the city governments who are fighting the mosquitoes, that they're monitoring the level of mosquito and whether there's disease organisms actually in those mosquitoes. So this is one thing that they passed a law, or tried to pass this law in Massachusetts this year. So mosquito management, it needs to be done very carefully. One thing that can be done instead of fumigation is what we call larvicides that can be applied in a targeted manner to breeding habitat. So when mosquitoes are still in the larval stage, it is easier and safer to kill them with larvicides rather than waiting until they're adults and then fumigating with a truck or with planes and spreading that toxic substances through the air. We see a lot of mosquito spraying in the United States, not only by governments, but also by people in their own yards. And we're trying to help people understand that, be aware that any water outside that collects in gutters, on roofs, or if people have a flower pot and it's collecting some water, if it sits for 4 days, mosquitoes can breed and turn into adults in 4 days. And so we try to, what we call source reduction, which helps the habitat that supports mosquitoes to go away. So I think if you were able to work with the cities and the mosquito managers for source reduction, education campaigns, and larvicide and monitoring, all of those can help, decrease the fumigation that happens. We don't want people to die of diseases for sure. And we know that some mosquitoes do carry diseases. But again, this idea of let's be, as careful as possible about the mosquito management so that we're not creating a different problem.
네, 그 모기가 번성할 수 있는 여러 도시 환경의 서식지를 제대로 관리하고 또는 모기 유충을 잡아먹을 수 있는 그런 또 모기사슬 관계의 다른 어떤 그 포식자의 역할도 주목해야 될 것 같습니다. 네, 제가 너무 또 이렇게 살충제 쪽으로 질문을 하다 보니까 조금 더 실제 시민들이 참여하고 행동해서 좀 꽃가루매개자를 위한 서식처 정원을 더 늘리기 위한 활동도 잘 들었는데요. 특히 그 미국에서 했던 비시티, 비캠퍼스 이니셔티브에 대한 좀 더 추가적인 설명을 듣고 싶은데요. 그 비시티, 비캠퍼스에 가입을 하거나 승인을 받으려면 조건이 까다로운 건지, 소위 도시의 시장이나 대학의 총장의 공식적인 요청으로 이루어지는 건지, 아니면 그 시민이나 학생들의 자발적인 요청으로 인해서도 가능한 건지 궁금하고요. 아까 살충제 사용을 중단했다고 한 8개 도시와 대학이 있었다고 했거든요. 그 도시와 대학에 대한 좀 상황을 좀 더 구체적으로 듣고 싶습니다.
Yes, to be an official member of Bee City or Bee Campus, the organization, the city or the campus needs to pass a resolution. And so it does need to be an official action. And then you apply to the Bee City program and then you're in. It's easy, but you have to do the habitat, pesticide reduction, and education are the sort of 3 requirements. I think one of the nice things about the program is that there's so many great examples. Every city, every campus is a little different, but many are doing really amazing things. And you learn about what they're doing. It's very inspiring for people. Like, hey, we can do that too, So yes, if you want more information, I think it's available for cities outside the US. I don't think you have to be in the US. I could put you in touch with the Bee City program manager, and she could give you more detail, give you a special presentation about it. If there's a city that's interested, she could give a presentation to the city council or whoever, citizens committee. Yeah.
한국의 서울시가 아니면 서울시 종로구가 아니면 어느 학교가 그 BCT 비캠퍼스에 가입을 할 수도 있다는 말씀인 거죠?
Seoul, yes, or any suburbs, or any campus, yeah. Any, campus or city that is in Korea, I think can be a member. Yeah. We would love to have Korea join it. That would be a great outcome of all of this.
네, 저희가 열심히 준비해서 문을 두들겨 보도록 노력하겠습니다. 그 BCT 빅캠퍼스의 다양한 교육 프로그램, 창의적인 이벤트에 대해서 설명도 해주셨는데요. 그 보여주신 슬라이드에서 그 폴리네이터 사파리, 그 투푸스 대학교인가요? 그다음에 버몬트에 있는 폴리네이터 퍼레이드. 왜냐하면 우리가 이제 벌 친화적인 시민 활동을 계속 기획하고 구상을 하는데 어떤 활동을 하는 게 좀 시민들한테 매력을 주고 재밌어 할까 했을 때 이게 되게 멋있어 보이는 프로그램이어서 이 사파리와 퍼레이드를 어떻게 하고 계신가요?
You know, at a campus, at a university, where you have students and professors who are already studying insects, there's already knowledge there, you know, and they can teach other students. So at a place like that, that's a good place for education to spread. Within a city, we ask these cities to put together a committee of citizens. And that way you pull in people who already have an interest, who already have some expertise, and they work together and get the word out to the larger community. So there's lots of ways to do it. You know, I'm thinking there's this sister city movement that has been around for a long time. Like the city of Portland, Oregon is a sister city with Sapporo, Japan. And maybe we need like sister bee cities, you know, that there could be sister bee cities with cities in Korea or bee campuses. And then there could be communication back and forth, sharing of ideas, etc.
네, 저희도 자매 결혼할 수 있도록 잘 준비해 보도록 하겠습니다. 우리도 항상 이렇게 그 화학적 방제를 하지 말고 친환경적 방제 또는 생태계 먹이사슬을 활용한 관리를 하자고 주장을 하면 그런 방법이 어떻게 가능하냐고 또 되물어보는 이 공직자와 또 시민이 있습니다. 그래서 또 친환경적 방제는 과연 효과가 있느냐, 비용이 너무 많이 들지 않느냐, 그런 또 의견이 있거든요. 그래서 그런 경험이 많으실 것 같고, 이 저시스 소사이어티에서는 그 통합적 해충 관리에 대한 또 매뉴얼도 있는 걸로 봤습니다. 어떤 내용이 들어있는 내용이죠?
Okay, so are you asking about eco-friendly pest management? Like how do we define that? Or what would be the principles of that? Okay. Okay. We always encourage people first to focus on prevention of the pests by changing the habitat conditions that are supporting the pest. So for example, in the trees that the cities are applying neonics on, what are they trying to kill? Is it, we would ask, okay, is this really a problem, first of all, at whatever they're trying to kill? If it is, say it's an invasive insect or something, is there a way to make the habitat less hospitable? So first, preventing the pest through whatever mechanism is needed to make it, you know, less hospitable for that pest. We also recommend really monitoring the pest pressure. Sometimes there are pests around, but it may not be like with mosquitoes. it may be a nuisance mosquito and not a disease-carrying mosquito. If it's a nuisance mosquito, we don't recommend the application of pesticides. So knowing what mosquitoes are out there, what pests, having good identification, this is something that the city should be doing, for instance, on that. But for people in their yards or campus or park, if there's weeds, we could look and say, is that weed really a problem? And if it is, how bad is it? And where do we really need to manage it? So monitoring and pressure is a principle. Prevention is a principle. And finally, the last principle is that if those fail and the pest is still a problem, then if people are going to apply pesticides, to do it in the most targeted manner possible. So not everywhere, but just where it's a problem. And also using the chemicals that are less risky. So you mentioned abamectin that the city is using. Abamectin is highly toxic to a lot of insects. It's systemic. So that would be like, oh, that's not necessarily a lot better, you know, than neonics. You want to be really careful with that. So these kinds of considerations, what's being used, how broad spectrum is it, how toxic, etc. How much is being used, etc. These are the three main principles that we use. We don't have a manual. We keep repeating these principles. Just like when I talked about the pollinators, the very simple things that we tell everybody, they need flowers, they need shelter, they need safety from pesticides. When we talk eco-friendly pest management, we go to those three principles: prevention, scouting, and limiting pesticide harm. And those are our three basic principles that we always talk about.
네, 잘 들었습니다. 긴 시간 동안 계속 질문을 해서 조금 피곤하실 텐데요. 준비한 질문은 또 5가지 정도 좀 남았습니다. 마지막 그 슬라이드에서 공원과 오픈 스페이스에서 농약 사용을 중지하고 특히 야생동물 피난처에서 농약 사용을 금지해야 한다는 주장에 매우 공감을 하는데요. 또 그렇게 되기를 정책과 법 제도가 바뀌어야 되는데 아무래도 많은 시민들은 해충이 많아진다 또는 감염병이 확산이 된다 하는 우려에서 좀 사전 예방 차원에서 독성 높은 살충제를 뿌려지기를 원하는 또 시민들의 의식과 여론이 또 팽배히 있는 게 현실입니다. 그래서 미국에서는 이런 시민 의식을 바꾸는데 어떻게 풀어가고 있습니까?
That's a great question. I will tell a story. A few years ago, I went to a pesticide symposium for urban pest management in cities. And I don't know if you've ever come to the United States, but we have some old cities, especially on the East Coast. So I went to the city of Baltimore for this conference, and cockroaches are a big issue in eastern cities of the United States. And a lot of the houses are what they call row houses. So there's apartment after apartment after apartment just right next to each other. Everybody shares walls. And the cockroaches move from apartment to apartment. And often in the past, people would have an exterminator come in and spray all around the kitchen and in the bathrooms and all around, the floors, the ceiling with very toxic pesticides. But we have learned about monitoring, and we have better pesticide methods. So rather than spray these very toxic pesticides that are not necessarily immediately contacting the pest and are causing likelihood of harm to people, there are what they call crack and crevice treatments that can be used. But even more important is the monitoring. So when I went to this conference, I learned that the pest control people really need to monitor the problem. So what's recommended is that they put down like a sticky board, about the size of a piece of paper, and with stickiness on it, and they leave it for a night. They count how many cockroaches are on it. You have to put it like at the back of the sink and you come back and count. It's not a fun job, but knowing how bad it is and then using the treatment until the point that, it goes down. I'm not an expert in cockroaches, say, but this helped me to understand the relationship between scouting and pesticide treatment. Because if you just come in and every 3 months spray the kitchen or whatever, it's not as effective as using treatments that are going to target the reproductive stage, that are going to be put very carefully into the cracks and crevices where the habitat is. So there's better methods available now. People need to understand that. I don't work with houses very much, like the insides of houses and the pests that can come inside houses. Those are of particular concern to people, and I understand. But so people gradually need to understand through organizations like ours, other organizations, like how to better approach these issues. We don't want people to have pests inside their houses that are going to cause them disease. But it's important to learn how to tackle that in a way that's effective and smart and safe for people. An important thing I will just say is that contractors in the United States for inside houses, a lot of that work is done by companies. And so training the companies and the people who do the work is really important. They need to understand how to do the work well. And so that's a piece of it.
네, 말씀 잘 들었습니다. 네, 제가 저시스 소사이어티 홈페이지를 보다가 궁금했던 부분인데요. 우리가 미국 그러면 영화나 여러 여행 관련된 소식에서 보면 잔디밭이 기본인 그런 조경을 딸려있는 주거지를 많이 봤습니다. 또 한편으로는 자기 집에 잔디를 깎지 않으면 벌금을 내야 한다는 그런 도시도 있다고 들은 바가 있습니다. 그런데 저시스 소사이어티 홈페이지 보다가 No Mow May 프로그램을 봤습니다. 5월달 한 달 동안은 풀을 깎지 않고 자라게 하여 야생동물의 서식지를 만드는 활동을 하고 있는 걸 봤습니다. 그래서 이런 것이 이 벌과 나비, 수분매개자들을 위한 도시 생활 공간에서의 녹지의 생태적 관리가 중요함을 알 수가 있었는데요. 이 프로그램을 하게 되었을 때 많은 시민들이 어떤 반응과 참여 또는 효과가 있었는지에 대해서 좀 더 내용을 듣고 싶습니다.
It's hugely popular. People love it. Some people don't. Yeah, I think people are on a spectrum, right? So some people really want to see more diversity in their yards. Other people, they want everything to be just perfect and no weeds, no flowers, no nothing, just green grass, you know? So the people who just want green grass and no flowers, they don't like it, but other people do. We think it's important to even think beyond that lawns themselves, they take a lot of energy. A lot of people put down herbicides or insecticides on lawns, and they use lawnmowers, which burn gas. So it's even better if people can convert the habitat to shrubs, trees, and perennial plants that will support a diversity of insects. So even more important than no more May, we encourage people to convert their habitat. But we see that no more May is very popular. So yeah, and maybe people just are happy to have a reason not to mow their lawn for a month. I don't know. Yeah.
네, 저희도 그 한국에서도 요즘 자기 집에 정원을 만들거나 또는 공공녹지에 정원을 가꾸고자 하는 그런 관심 있는 분들이 많아지고 있기 때문에 좀 더 서식처 정원으로 좀 바꿔야 된다고 하는 그런 또 시도도 있습니다. 그래서 요즘 확인하다 보니까 아까 슬라이드에서도 꽃가루 매개자 서식지 키트도 나눠주는 게 있고, 또는 이미 종자에서부터 이 살충제 오염이 되어 있기 때문에 좀 이렇게 벌과 나비의 안전한 그런 묘목과 꽃을 공급하는 캠페인을 하고 계시는 거잖아요. 한국에서는 그 꽃을 파는 종자를 파는 가게에 가보면 대부분 이렇게 정원식물의 종자가 수입산이 많고, 그 수입산의 종자는 대부분 코팅이 되어 있다고 하더라고요. 근데 그 코팅이 어떤 약재로 코팅되었는지, 어떤 그 과정을 거쳤는지에 대한 정보는 거의 남겨져 있지 않습니다. 그래서 미국에서는 아까 그 어떤 벌과 나비에 특화되어서 이런 서식지 키트를 만들었고, 약간 Be Safe Nursery Plant 공급 캠페인은 어느 수준으로까지 확대되었는지 좀 추가 말씀 부탁드립니다.
We're targeting whatever is native in those areas. Definitely the monarch butterfly is one focal species, partly because they only lay eggs on milkweeds. So it's easy to provide their habitat, but we also provide a wide range of other plants that are useful for butterflies and for bees. It's in 11 states now. And so we're providing habitat kits in many different areas and supporting the native species in those areas. We are working with our nurseries to produce the plants in a way that is more safe, saying you can't use these certain pesticides. So we're telling them no neonics, and we also don't allow certain other pesticides. We allow some pesticides, but not some of the ones that are the most toxic, and that could remain in the plant afterward. So this is still work that we need to get better at, but this is part of the connection between Be Safe plants and habitat kits.
네, 이제 1시간 반이 지나가고 있는데요. 두세 가지 질문만 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 마지막 5번째 소개한 게 커뮤니티 사이언스의 중요성이었잖아요. 그래서 이 저시스 소사이어티에서 강조하는 이 과학 기반의 정보 제공에 저희도 되게 매우 공감을 합니다. 범블비 워치, 범블비 아틀라스 시민과학도 하고 계신데 그 커뮤니티 과학이 뭐 일반 사용자가 스마트폰으로 뭔가 사진을 찍고 기록하고 하는 어플리케이션 기반의 플랫폼인지 묻고 싶고요. 왜냐하면 저희가 계속 이런 시민들이 참여하는 시민과학 프로젝트를 계속 널리 확대를 하려고 하는데 또 하나의 또 뭔가 여쭤보고 싶은 거는 보다 많은 사람들이 쉽게 접근하는 수준에서의 종을 찾고 기록하는 게 우선인 건지 아니면 조금 더 정책을 촉구하고 변화를 만들기 위해서 뭔가 좀 리서치, 연구를 하기 위해서 좀 더 디테일한 조사 설계를 해서 좀 소규모라도 좀 더 좀 전문적으로 하는 그런 커뮤니티 사이언스가 필요한 건지 어떤 좀 경험적인 노하우를 말씀해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we would say they're both important. This doesn't replace professional science at the university level. We still need that. This does give us observations from people on the ground in many, many different locations. The check that we have is that every observation gets reviewed by people who really know their bees. So if they cannot identify the photo, if it looks like they're not sure, they don't assign it, they don't just guess. And they, so there's a scientific check on all of this data. And a photo that I showed you tonight that I took, I gave to Rich Hatfield, our bumblebee scientist, and asked him to identify. And he said, it's a little hard to tell because of the photo. It could be this, or it could be that. So I know that it's not always easy from one photo to identify it to species. So it's not a perfect system, this community science, but it does do two things. It does give us the potential for identifying, the density of observations and the range in which we're seeing certain species. And maybe even more importantly, it gets people excited about contributing to all of this, because especially for Bumblebee Watch, when people just are like, oh, wow, I'm going to take this photo and I'm going to upload it and I'm going to contribute. It really feels good, I think, to people to contribute to that. And even if the observation, maybe the photo is fuzzy and they can't use it, but it gets people part of this larger effort. And so, of course, it doesn't replace professional science done by, the universities. It's still very important, but it expands people's ability to contribute that. I think you have iNaturalist. Do some of you participate in iNaturalist there? Because I think it's global. It's kind of similar to that.
과학적인 증거 기반의 자료 수집과 더불어서 시민들의 인식 증진과 기여도를 높일 수 있는 그런 방향으로 말씀해 주셔서 더 무엇을 어떻게 준비해야 될지 또 좀 더 내용을 들을 수 있었습니다. 마지막 슬라이드에 저시스 소사이티에서 발행한 여러 자료들이 좀 보여졌는데요. 교육 프로그램도 하는 거로 알고 있고 이런 자료를 제공하는 게 멤버십 회원에게만 제공하는 건 아니죠. 뭔가 또 무료로 다운로드가 될 수도 있는 건데 또 판매하는 자료도 있는 건가요? 어떤 교육을 하고 있고 어떤 자료를 어떻게 공개를 하고 있는 거죠?
Almost all of our information is free, almost all of it. The only thing that people pay for, and I think it's through a donation, is our books. So we have some wonderful books. They're in English, but I'll show you a few of our books. We have this wonderful book, Attracting Native Pollinators. And this is farming with native beneficial insects. This is 100 plants to feed the bees. We have some other books, and these are the only things that cost people money. Everything else is on our website for free. We also offer all of our webinars for free. You can go to our YouTube site and watch any of our webinars. These things are in closed caption, usually, almost all of our webinars, so you could translate them to Korean through the closed caption ahead of time if you wanted to watch them or show them to a larger audience. So that is a way that you could access the webinars. Translating the fact sheets, you know, maybe through Google Translate or something, it might be easier, to translate those. But everything's at our website available as you like. The only thing that costs is these books.
네, 그럼 저희가 웹사이트에 있는 자료도 다 한번 공부하고 번역도 해서 좀 시민들한테 알려드리고 책도 나중에 구매해서 같이 더 발전될 수 있도록 노력하겠습니다. 네, 거의 뭐 1시간 40분이 지났습니다. 40분 가량 발제를 해주시고 1시간 동안 이렇게 여러 질문들에 대해서 답변을 해주셔서 너무나도 감사를 드리고 영감을 얻고 경험을 배울 수 있었습니다. 마지막 질문인데요. 마지막 질문인데요. 오늘 저희가 지금 한국 시간으로 11시, 오전 11시 40분이고 점심을 먹고 2시경에 여러 사람들이 모여서 한국에서 야생벌 수분매개자를 보호하기 위한 시민운동은 앞으로 어떠해야 할 것인가에 대해서 토론회를 할 예정입니다. 원래 이제 그 샤론이 한국에 방문을 했으면 같이 얘기를 나눌 수 있었을 텐데 그게 좀 아쉬운 상태였고요. 그래서 사실 이런 시민운동은 한국에서 올해 처음으로 이제 시작이 되었습니다. 본격적으로 한 건 처음이고요. 그래서 이 도시에서 야생벌을 조사하고 서식처 정원을 만들어 가려고 준비하고 그 다음에 도시에는 여러 공공녹지의 생태적 관리를 조금 변화를 시키고 네오니코티노이드 또는 여러 그 살충제, 독성이 높은 살충제의 사용을 근절시키는 그런 캠페인을 이제 활발하게 하려고 시작을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 미국에서 오랫동안 활동해온 전문 활동가로서 우리 한국의 시민단체, 시민활동가 또는 한국의 정부에 대해서 좀 권고하는 또는 뭐 좀 메시지를 좀 남겨주시면 제가 이따 오후 2시 토론회 때 잘 또 전달해서 잘 활용하도록 하겠습니다.
Well, I think the message that I would focus on is that we can't survive without insects, pollinators and all other kind of insects. They help us live. So it's important that people start to appreciate and understand our interconnection with insects. And I guess the second message is that, you know, it's very exciting to see that across all the space and ocean, you know, you were working on with your population to try to get environmental protection that are in Korea. And it would be lovely to work together if we can in the future. We have trainings on things like the Bumblebee Watch and Bumblebee Atlas. And if someone from Korea wanted to come to those trainings, some of them are virtual, could be done online. Some are in person, but it would be lovely to sponsor somebody from Korea for something like that. And so I'd like to keep in touch. Some of you have my email. You can continue to contact me, anybody who wants to contact, and maybe we can continue to communicate. We can use Google Translate to get beyond the language barrier, maybe.
네, 대단히 감사합니다. 곤충 없이 인류는 생존할 수 없다. 곤충의 감사한 마음을 가지고 우리가 그들을 이해한다라는 메시지도 되게 간결하면서도 우리의 활동의 이유가 되는 아주 중요한 글귀가 되는 것 같고요. 사실 우리가 답답한 마음이 많았었습니다. 우리는 이제 이런 활동을 해보고자 했는데 우리보다 훨씬 오랫동안 했던 미국, 유럽의 활동은 어땠을까 궁금했던 차원에서 이렇게 샤론님을 만나게 되어서 뭔가 좀 속이 뻥 뚫리는 그런 느낌도 가지고 아까 말씀해 주셨던 함께 협력하고 소통하고 언어가 조금 안 되더라도 충분히 구글 번역기로도 통할 수 있는 그런 사회가 되었기 때문에 향후에 저희가 이제 BCT, B 캠퍼스의 수준에 걸맞는 도시를 만들어가는 과정에서 시민들과의 활발한 캠페인 또는 범블비 와치, 범블비 아틀라스 수준에서 뭔가 함께 공유하고 소통할 수 있는 그런 시민 행동을 만들어서 같이 또 소통하고 함께 만들어 봤으면 좋겠습니다. 거의 1시간 50분 가량 같이 함께 시간을 해주셔서 감사하고요. 이 유튜브 방송을 듣고 있는 시민들도 앞으로 함께 이 도시의 벌과 나비를 보호할 수 있는 활동에 동참해 주시길 바라고, 혹시 이제 유튜브 진행상에 이 통역이 제대로 전달되지 않은 것은 저희가 다시 확인을 해가지고 나중에 그 자막 처리나 일부 영상을 넣어서 우리 샤론 선생님의 발제와 질문에 대한 답변을 함께 들을 수 있게끔 조치를 하도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 긴 시간 동안 함께 해주셔서 감사합니다. Goodbye. See you again, Sharon.
Thank you so much.